Okay. So, what we saw in our previous sessions, a quick recap. So we saw introduction of Bhagavad Gita on a very high level. So we saw who we are. So we are eternally the spirit souls having an experience with this particular body. So that's our identity. And what are we doing in this particular world? We perform some actions with this particular body, and that actions bind us with karma, depending on what consciousness we do those particular actions. And we are all bound by time, and we are all controlled by the laws of nature, which are applicable to us. And we have divinity, which is God. We try to connect to God with the help of yoga. The word yoga means connection. So the whole world is controlled by Ishvara, the supreme controller, who is God, who is Krishna. And we also saw that God is a person. So, and what is karma? So, anybody who can give a quick definition of what is karma? Brandon. So, what is your understanding of karma?
Is the reaction of our actions, like like the consequence.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Zoom user, can you please update your name or in sorry, who just typed on the chat now. So, what is your name?
Oh, it's me, Diksha. Like, isn't my name showing in that?
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Okay, yes. So karma. So how karma keeps us bound in this world? So we all have in our consciousness, the nature of the soul is to derive pleasure. So we try to derive this pleasure from all the external or the worldly activities. So our desires accumulate karma. And depending on whatever desire we have in our mind at the time of death, in our next birth, we get a body according to our desire that is there in our mind at the time of death, or whatever karma you have accumulated in this particular lifetime. So we all are eternal spirit souls. We get different bodies depending on whatever desires we have, and we perform activities according to that particular desire. So these desires are stored in our consciousness in the form of impressions. So our consciousness have different compartments. So whatever body we have, this hands, legs, and this face and everything, it's called as the gross body. At the same time, we have a subtle body which we cannot see. And this subtle body is mind, intelligence, and false ego, and impressions. Okay, so we cannot see this particular subtle body. So we saw what is mind, what is intelligence. We saw the example with the horses having, a chariot with 5 horses and a chariot driver pulling the horses with the rope, trying to steer the horses in the right direction. So the horses are considered to be our senses, and the chariot driver is considered to be our intelligence, and the rope is considered to be our mind. So with the help of our intelligence, we are supposed to steer our mind so that we act or the horses go in the right directions. And who is the passenger? The passenger is the soul, and the chariot is nothing but our body. So that is how we relate. Okay. So, with the help of our intelligence, we need to steer our mind in the right direction so that the sense objects do not go out of control or we don't do anything wrong. So, for that, we need to be situated in an intelligence where we understand what is the purpose of this life and what are we doing. So, we saw what is karma, we saw what is reincarnation, and our consciousness also has a storehouse of impressions. So whatever activities we do in this particular life, we accumulate impressions. So depending on those impressions, our intelligence will drive our mind. Our mind will sometimes dominate over our intelligence. That is depending on how strong our impressions are. So these impressions are what we accumulate, called as karma or karmic reactions from all our previous birth. So before, what Bhagavad Gita says, before we have taken human form of birth, we already have taken millions of birth. So there are total 8.4 million species, and we have transmigrated through all that different bodies before we get the human form of life. And we have around 400,000 forms of human bodies. Okay, so what is the purpose of this particular life? So we also saw what is called philosophy. We also saw what is called religion. So there are 5 points. Anybody who can explain those Artha Panchakas, any philosophy, we should always answer these 5 questions. So who remembers those? Gokul.
Yeah, so first thing is it
First one.
should address who is God,
Okay, who we are. That is the
who
first.
we are. Yeah.
Who
Okay.
we are. What is our identity? We are eternal spirit souls. Okay. Okay. And the second one, as you said, is who is
Who
God
is God?
and what is his destination, where he is. Okay. And what is the third one? What is the means to attain him? Okay. What is the means to attain him? So the means is this particular body. Okay. What we are supposed to do with this particular body so that we can attain him. So fourth, what are the obstacles? Okay. And five, what do we do after attaining him? So if point number 2 changes, you put Vishnu, it's Vaishnavism. You put Shiva, it's Shaivism. If you put the 4 Kumaras, it is Kaumara. If point 2 changes, the religion changes, the destination changes. And the combination of all of these 5 points is called as philosophy. Okay. And any religion, the second point, any religion, without having answers to these 5 questions, without having a philosophical understanding, is nothing but a mental speculation. So if you are following any particular tradition or religion, it should have answers to these 5 questions. How complete are that? Those answers are for us to investigate. So we have the Gita philosophy. We can always compare with Gita. Okay. So what Gita says, who we are eternal spirit souls. Who is God? Krishna. And he's existing in Goloka Vrindavan, which is a spiritual world. So the structure of this earth, this universe, is above earth, there are 7 heavenly planets, and below earth, there are 7 hellish planets. That is one universe. Okay. And there are millions of universes as per Gita. But that's what our Shastras say. And above all this material world and material realm, we have spiritual world and spiritual planets where gods live. And Krishna lives eternally in Goloka Vrindavan. That is the topmost spiritual planet we are talking about. Okay. So, number 3, what is the means to attain him? This human form of life. And the means to attain him is through yoga. And there are different yoga processes. That is what we are going to see. Okay. And we take multiple, what are the obstacles? That is nothing but our subtle body, mind, intelligence, our impressions from our karma, and because of which we keep reincarnating multiple times. Okay, and we'll see briefly on what is false ego today. Okay, so the subtle body comprises of mind, intelligence, false ego, and lot of impressions from this current birth and previous birth. Okay, and the last is, what do we do after attaining God? Okay, so all these 5, Bhagavad Gita gives answers to the fullest. Okay, and what is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita, worship of Vishnu or Krishna, is called as Vaishnavism. So who's Vishnu and who's Krishna? So Krishna in his personal palace or in his personal home, Goloka Vrindavan, is called as Krishna. So at work, he's called as Vishnu. So he expands himself. The closest word is he clones himself. So at work, he's called as Vishnu. So to take care of this entire material manifestation, he expands or clones himself as Vishnu. Like how at home, you may be a mother, or you may be a father, or you may be a brother, or you may be a son or a daughter to somebody, right? But at work, that is your personal position. But at work, you might be a nurse, you might be a student, or you might be a clerk, or you might be an engineer, or a doctor, or a lawyer. That is the official position you hold inside this particular material world. Okay, so Krishna in the spiritual world, right? He is inside his palace, which is called as Goloka Vrindavan, and he is eternally residing in another spiritual world, which is called as Vaikuntha or as Vishnu. And Vishnu takes care of the entire material creation. Okay, so Vishnu is originating from Krishna. So that's what Bhagavad Gita says. So that's what Vaishnavism says. So these are the few elementary concepts which we have seen. So any questions on what is karma, what is reincarnation, what is soul, what is consciousness, what is mind, what is intelligence, what is false ego, that we'll be seeing today, what is called as impressions, how do we accumulate these impressions? Any questions until here before we move forward? Please feel free to ask. So Archie, are you able to, follow the basic concepts so far? I've just done a quick recap.
Yes, thank you very much. That was very helpful. I think I got the gist from
Okay.
the summary. That was very, very helpful. Thank you so much.
Okay, great. So now that summary will help move forward. Hey Indra. Hare
Hello,
Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So were you able to follow until now? Any questions?
No,
Okay. All right. So yeah, with this understanding, we'll move forward. So previously, I'll quickly share. So I'll quickly try to get some information. Trying to find the PPT. Yes. Okay, so I'm quickly bringing one slide on so that, yeah. So this is exactly what we saw as the summary of Gita. You remember, right? So this is the version of Bhagavad Gita we are reading. And this is how the Gita is structured. So the Gita is in Sanskrit. And this is how it look. We have the Sanskrit text and the transliteration in English, and then word to word meaning, and then the translation for that particular text, and then a commentary, a descriptive understanding of how we should perceive the reality or perceive this particular text, Gita, as per Krishna's perspective. Okay, so the Acharya is A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, and this is his particular commentary. So there are 700 verses in Gita. 575 was spoken by Krishna, 83 by Arjuna. 17 questions were asked. Out of that 83, Arjuna asks 17 questions. And what Krishna gives is answer to those 17 questions. Okay. And what we learn from those 17 questions is the key takeaway of Bhagavad Gita and how we apply it in our lives. So there are different principles which we can learn, which we'll be seeing. And 41 verses were spoken by Sanjaya. So the whole scene of Gita is happening during Mahabharata, 45 minutes, conversation between Krishna and Arjuna. And Dhritarashtra is the father of Duryodhan, the Kauravas, okay? And Sanjaya is his assistant who is telling, okay, what's going on in the battlefield. So he speaks 41 verses and Dhritarashtra speaks only one verse. So totally there are 18 chapters, and there are 5 topics which we saw. The nature, what is soul, what is time, what is yoga, and what is Ishvara, who is God. So these are the 5 topics, and there are 3 sections. That's what we'll be seeing today, the different yoga process and the science of yoga. So this is what we'll be seeing. And this Gita is available, what ISKCON has contributed is in 60 languages and 100 million copies sold all over the world. Okay, so these are the 3 sections of Gita. First 6 chapters, it talks about Karma Yoga and Dhyana Yoga. We'll be seeing that in detail. And the middle 6 chapters talks about Bhakti Yoga. That is the means. When we saw what is philosophy, what is the means to attain God? So that is Bhakti Yoga. And the last 6 chapters speaks about Jnana Yoga, how we apply our intelligence, and concluding with Bhakti Yoga. So ultimate conclusion of Bhagavad Gita is Bhakti Yoga. So if you see particularly, if you read this particular Gita, so the conclusion of Bhagavad Gita is Bhakti Yoga. So in most of the purports, you will always see a flavor of what is Bhakti Yoga so that you can understand the purports very, very clearly. So that is how this Gita has been translated. So it is a Bhakti Yoga centered translation. That is how we need to understand. It is centered around Bhakti Yoga because the conclusion of Bhagavad Gita is Bhakti Yoga as per Bhagavan Shri Krishna. Okay. So this is like the Gita sandwich. Whenever you take a sandwich, the best portion of the sandwich will be available in the middle. On top, you will have a bread, and the bottom, you will have a bread. Okay, so the best part of Bhagavad Gita is in chapter 6 to 12, that is Bhakti Yoga. That is where Krishna will say, what is the means to attain him. So for now, keep this in mind, and we will see each and every yoga a bit in detail today. So let me stop sharing. I think we have one question. Yes, Pooja.
My question is, you mentioned that this is a Bhakti Yoga centered translation.
Yes.
So does it mean there are other translations which are not centered around Bhakti Yoga?
So Gita's conclusion is Bhakti. So the translations will be centered around Bhakti. So any other conclusion of Bhagavad Gita is, we'll have to see, we saw 4 sampradayas, right? 4 bona fide sampradayas, Vaishnava sampradayas. So Krishna has given this knowledge to Lakshmi, which is Sri Sampradaya, and to Brahma, which is Madhva Sampradaya, to Shiva, Rudra, which is Rudra Sampradaya, and to 4 Kumaras, which is the Kumara Sampradaya. And all the acharyas who have 4 bona fide sampradayas who have translated Bhagavad Gita is as per the conclusion, which is a bhakti-centered translation. So that is the right understanding. So any other translation which is giving a different understanding outside of these 4 sampradayas is not considered bona fide. So that is why we gave the picture, and this is how we understand Bhagavad Gita.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. So yes, now when Krishna, he takes Arjuna in between the 2 armies in the battlefield. So that's where the fun begins, right? So the whole Bhagavad Gita, you see it like a podcast, right? A podcast, a conversation between 2 personalities. So it's not that Krishna is prepared in advance and this is what he's going to speak. It's like interactive, right? So when Arjuna blows the conch in the first initial chapters, which means he wants to fight, okay? And the whole Mahabharata scene happens to clearly teach us what is dharma, what is right and what is wrong. So what we understand from Mahabharata is what is dharma. Okay, so what is right and what is wrong? So now after so much of conversations and so much of history, okay, they all decide that the war must go ahead. So Arjuna blows the conch. And then, yes, he says, Krishna, take me in between the armies. Between the 2 armies, I want to take a look. So the decision was made to fight. So as soon as Krishna takes Arjuna in between two armies, Arjuna gets confused. He doesn't want to fight. So Arjuna has two options. One is fight and one is don't fight. So that's where he's stuck. So now Krishna is trying to guide him to make a decision. Okay. So now Arjuna has two options. First one is fight, which is the path of action. Okay. And the second option is don't fight, which is the path of renunciation. Okay. So there are two options, and Krishna gives 4 solutions for that. He puts in perspective. He gives 4 different paths for that. Okay. So the first option, when you say fight, which means the path of action. So Krishna says you act with attachment or you act with detachment. Okay. And in the second path of renunciation, Krishna says you renounce internally or you renounce externally. Renounce internally means you renounce mentally at the mind level. Externally means you renounce from doing your particular activities. So he says there are 4 different paths. And what Krishna recommends is internal renunciation, okay, which is jnana, the path of jnana, and act without attachment, which is the path of karma yoga. So this is the broad overview. So now we'll see. So basically, when you go to a doctor, right? So Krishna is not keen on analyzing all the yoga parts a lot in detail. So that's not the purpose. The purpose is to guide Arjuna to make a decision, and he gives an overview of all the 4 parts. But that overview itself is comprehensive. That is how we understand. So when Arjuna is confused, so Krishna takes a perspective. So what Krishna does is from all the 4 different parts which he says, he comes to the conclusion, a scriptural and a logical conclusion that Arjuna has to fight. So that is the brilliance of Krishna. So he gives the overview of all the 4 parts and all the reasons, and everything will logically conclude that Arjuna has to fight. Now, in what consciousness he has to fight, that is the whole understanding of Bhagavad Gita. Okay, so based on how Krishna is guiding Arjuna, we learn lessons from that and we tune our consciousness to a spiritual consciousness. That is spirituality. So when you go to a doctor, he gives you a lot of treatment options. So he doesn't tell you in detail what is allopathy, what is homeopathy, or what is Ayurveda. So he analyzes all the options and say, okay, these are your options, these are your pros and cons. Okay, so now you decide what you want to do. And then finally we'll ask, okay, what do you recommend? So Arjuna does the same thing to Krishna. So Krishna gives all the options, different pros and cons, which option will take you where, which option is how difficult is each option. And after analyzing all of that, then Arjuna will ask Krishna, okay, Krishna, what is your recommendation? And then Krishna will also give a recommendation as well. Initially, what Krishna will say is you do whatever you want. And then finally, when Arjuna asks, can you please give me your recommendation? Then he'll give a recommendation as well. So this is how Gita flows. Okay. So during the reason why Krishna talks every yoga is after a certain set of answers, then Arjuna asks more doubt, right? So during when a class is happening, so sometimes in between the class, we have doubts. So from that, the conversation first Krishna starts with Karma Yoga. He explains that. And then, so say what Krishna explains in Karma Yoga basically is you perform your actions as a prescribed duty. Okay, but don't be attached to the fruits of the action, which means the results. So that is what Krishna says in Karma Yoga. So what he says is ultimately, if you proceed with this mindset, it will lead you towards the path of liberation. He never said it will give you liberation. It will lead you towards the path of liberation, which means your mind will settle down. You won't be lamenting. You won't be grieving anymore to make any decisions if you act in this particular way. So after he establishes Karma Yoga, then Arjuna asks the question. So you spoke about, he picks on one point. So you spoke about peace, right? So if the goal is to find peace of mind, then a lot of people meditate. There is a path of dhyana. I see a lot of sages doing that. Then Arjuna asked the question about dhyana yoga. Okay, so that is how Gita flows. So when he asks questions about dhyana yoga, it's also called as the Ashtanga yoga. Then Krishna starts explaining that particular process and the pros and cons. So what is Dhyana Yoga? It has a lot of rules. So basically, the Ashtanga Yoga, the eightfold yoga system, that's what we speak about. So we follow some rules and then we do asanas with our body. And then with the help of asanas, we try to control our breath. Okay, the pranayama. So it's called as yama, niyama, do's, don'ts, asanas, pranayama, and pratyahara. Control of all senses, and then dharana, you make your mind steady, and then you attain samadhi, a state of mind where you can completely focus on God. So how the process works, the meditation process, you focus on your breath, right? You follow the rules and regulations, you sit in a particular posture, you focus on your breath, and then you have like different holes in your bodies, right? Your ears, nose, eyes, mouth, your belly, your anus, your rectum. So you have different holes. The life air flows through all these different holes. Okay. So now when you focus on your breath, you harness that life air and then you bring it until your heart, where your soul is. Your soul is in your heart because all this life air is in equilibrium inside your heart. And that's why the soul is in your heart. So when you focus on the breath and come lift the life air and come to the point of your soul, right? And from there, you take it till your head. So that is what they do in the Kundalini yoga practice. Okay, so now this particular yoga system is bona fide, right? You'll find this in Yoga Sutra, but in this modern age, it takes a lot of effort to be in the same state of mind by practicing it throughout the day. It is not really easy. So that's what Krishna says. So after hearing this entire process, which is actually the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, in the first 5 chapters are like up from the 2nd to 5th chapter, Krishna explains about Karma Yoga, and then he establishes Karma Yoga, and he says how Karma Yoga can lead you to the path of self-realization or towards liberation, right? So you do your actions without being attached to the results. Okay, so he says detached engagement. So he never says, so now when Arjuna says it gives peace of mind, then Krishna starts explaining this because the sages are continuously meditating. So what we need to understand is, so there are different, the age of the universe is 311 trillion years. That is the age of the universe. So there is a timeline chart. So let me see if I can pull that out for you guys. So I'll share something now.
Prabhuji, I have a question.
Yes.
Maybe you would talk a bit more about it, but maybe I could just tell you. So what I want to ask is that, yes, detached work, yes, I understand that, but my question is about, so for example, it is the fruit that makes you do the act, isn't it?
Yes.
So, for example, why would we go to a tuition class, right? We would go to a tuition class because we want the fruit, which is getting better results, right?
Yes.
So how can we be detached from that result? How can we be detached? I understand that while you're
Mm.
doing the work, you be detached, because then only
Mm.
you can focus, right? If I'm worrying about the result, how can I
Mm.
focus? But this broad statement that don't worry, because if then I don't even need to go to the tuition. Why do I need to go to the tuition class, right? I need to go because
Yes.
I need better results. So I think that this broad statement of detached work sometimes can be a little bit difficult, because I think that in simple words, if I may speak in Hindi, then कर्म कर्म का जो अंत होता है वही तो कर्म करवाता है.
Mm-hmm.
The end result only makes you do the karma, right?
Yes. So we'll get there. Eventually we'll get there. So the point is not to, not work. That's what Krishna says. So when he says detach, which means attach to something else, right? So what we mentioned is the karma yoga will lead you to a path of self-realization, which means the purpose comes to attach to bhakti. So we'll see that. So we are talking about the yoga ladder. So you can do work. We have to do work because we have taken this form of body, which means everybody has to engage in work. That is clearly understood. What type of work is depending on your varna. Varna means your station in life. So easiest way to attain your varna. So there are like 4 different varnas: Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Shudra, right? So the 4 different varnas. So Brahmanas, usually this is to keep the society in order. So there is a verse in Gita where Krishna says all these 4 varnas are created by me. So the Brahmanas are supposed to teach. Kshatriyas are supposed to take care of the administration activities. Vaishyas are supposed to protect cows, and Shudras are supposed to help the other 3. Right? That is the different varnas Krishna has given according to different level of intelligence or consciousness. So the easiest way to identify your varna, you might be inclined to do this particular activity, you might be inclined to teach, or you might be inclined to advise. So that means you have a Brahminical varna. So that varna is completely not depending on your birth. That's the principle of Gita. So what we are all having a preset mind, which is kind of polluted, is varna is by birth. So the varna is by the qualities that we cultivate with our education, how we train our intelligence. So the moment you take a human form of body, you need to be falling under the varnashram system. Okay, you must be under one of the 4 varnas. Okay, so that is how you're supposed to lead your life. So now the Karma Yoga path will lead you towards liberation or towards self-realization. The purpose of life is to understand that we are not this particular body, right? And the results or the desire to own the results is what is keeping you bound. So now you have to maintain this particular body. Now you have taken a varna, and after taking a varna, you will take an ashrama. Whether you will be a married person or whether you will be a celibate person, right? So according to your varna and ashrama, you will have to perform activities to maintain yourself and to maintain your families. But the desire to keep the fruits with you is what keeps you bound. So which means we are not saying go and give everything to everybody, but we'll have to desire with the right consciousness. So we'll have to train the consciousness. So what Krishna says is the ultimate, when in between chapters 6 to 12. So the first 6 chapters he talks about the karma yoga, and then when Arjuna asked this question in the end of 5th chapter, okay, talking about peace, lot of sages are announcing and doing meditation. Then Krishna says how difficult is that particular process in the modern age. So 5,000 years back when Krishna says itself it was so difficult. In today's world, there are certain rules and regulations. You will have to go to a forest. You'll have to sit in a very silent place. You will have to completely forcefully detach from things. and you will have to sit on a deer skin, and there are like a lot of rules and regulations to which practically a person cannot do. So that is external renunciation, and then which Krishna doesn't recommend, and then the meditation. So that is the eightfold yoga system, which is the Ashtanga yoga. So what we do as yoga and asanas gives us temporary benefit. The word yoga means connection to divinity, the connection to divine, God, Krishna. So any yoga which is not teaching this particular connection to the supreme is not a bona fide yoga system. So the modern yoga can improve your body, it can improve your flexibility, it can stabilize your mind, with which keeping that as a catalyst for self-realization. So even karma yoga can lead you towards that. Even the Ashtanga yoga or the Dhyana yoga can lead you towards that, is what Krishna is saying. But what Krishna ultimately culminates the discussion there is the ultimate point is to keep your mind steady, to keep your mind in peace. Only then you can understand the knowledge of yourself. So he explains who you are in the beginning of the second chapter. What is our identity? We are not this body. The fundamental problem comes in because we are identifying ourselves with this particular body. So the real ego, everybody has ego. So I told we'll touch upon the false ego, right? Everybody has ego. So what is ego is your identity with Krishna, who you are, Atma, right? The first question of the Artha Panchakas. Then who is God, Paramatma? What is the relationship between two? That is the real ego. Now, the false ego is we identify ourselves with this particular body, thinking that we are this body, we are this mind, this is mine. Possessing this gives me pleasure, possessing that gives me pleasure. But ultimately, if we, through the yoga system, any of the yoga, if we build the connection with divinity and harness all our creative energy, you might be inclined in doing many different activities, right? So that is the creative energy which your body gives. So your life air or prana flows through all these chakras. There are 6 chakras in your body, right from your Muladhara to Sahasrara. So you need to channelize this life air, and you need to make sure that all this creative energy through any of the yoga system is connected to Krishna. Then Krishna will reveal who you actually are and what is the relationship, and whatever pleasure we get from all these material substances or all these relationship, Krishna will give directly to you. That is the science of bhakti yoga. So what Krishna says, when detached engagement, which means not to completely avoid all of that. You do that, right? But internally, that is your dharma, right? Your body has a dharma. When you take this human form of birth, you have a dharma. Your mind has a dharma. Your mind can do sankalpa, vikalpa, which is accept and reject. It can't do anything else. And your soul has a dharma. So what is the eternal dharma? Or the dharma of the soul is to seek pleasure from Krishna to Paramatma. The dharma of the Atma is to establish a relationship with Paramatma. So that is the yoga connection which the yoga teaches us. So Karma Yoga is a path, and Dhyana Yoga is a path, and Krishna tells how difficult is that process, the Paka process. And when I say this, the timeline, the universe is 311 trillion years old. So we are almost like halfway through that, right? So as in when the progression comes in, so the lifespan of humans decreases. So at the time of Ramayana, you know what is the lifespan of Dashrath? He was 80,000 years old. Ramayana happened in a different yuga. So there are 4 yugas, right? The Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapar Yuga, and Kali Yuga. Right now we are in Kali Yuga. And Kali Yuga lasts for 832,000 years as per the Shastras. Okay? And there are like multiple, the combination of 4 yugas is called as one Mahayuga, right? And there are like multiple Mahayugas in one day of Brahma. Brahma is the creator of this particular universe. And Brahma lives for 100 years. We are on the 51st day of Brahma. Okay. And for in one day of Brahma, there are multiple Mahayugas, which is called as one Kalpa. And after every day of Brahma, the whole material creation collapses. And then when he wakes up, it is recreated. This is how the whole universe is functioning. This is what our scriptures say. So now, when Dhyana Yoga is mentioned in the Yoga Sutras as one of the bona fide process, yes, because in Satya Yuga and in Treta Yuga, the human lifespan was 80,000 years and like 20,000 years. So they had all the time to sit and meditate in the forest, leaving everything and attain perfection and be in that state and function. But what is a human lifespan in Kali Yuga? We don't have that much time. And how much ever you try, there are yogis who actually have like good impressions, who have attained this perfection. So the moment you attain perfection, which means you can leave this body whenever you want. That is what the yoga process of dhyana yoga says. So how many of us know people who can do that? Buddha was able to do that because Buddha was an incarnation of Krishna. Anybody, real time. I know few yogis who have lived for like 150 years or 200 years. And so ultimately, what's the point? Right? Like to achieve that is like point not 1%. So that is how we understand this particular dhyana process. And then after hearing that, Arjuna says at the end of sixth chapter, oh, this is impossible. I can't do this. That is how Arjuna concludes. And then after that, Krishna talks about bhakti yoga, right? And that is also a part of Gyan Yoga. So wherein you can actually read the Vedic scriptures. So we saw what are Vedas, we saw what are Upanishads in the first class. How many scriptures are there? Do we really have time to go through all of that in the 60 years? Again, the process is bona fide, but for this particular yuga, for Kali Yuga, that is not the prescribed process according to Shastras, according to Bhagavad Gita. That is the understanding. So Krishna talks briefly about the Jnana path, also the path of intelligence, reading the scriptures, but we don't have time. And then Arjuna asks, okay, what are my options? Now I'm following the path of Karma Yoga. Now there'll be whenever you basically, right, like a good education, right? You go to a school and you get a good education. So ultimately, the good education should give you more clarity, right? It should give you more curiosity, not confusions. So when we always think that, some people think that bhakti is a very, very simple process. This is for people who cannot do charity or who cannot do austerity or you cannot do hard work. It is a very, very easy process. So we all have this misconceptions and we think it is simple. So education makes simple things complex because it is not as black and white was what we think. It is making it complex to give more curiosity and more clarity on how much we can learn. It says that it is not actually black and white as you think. Little knowledge is really, really dangerous. So it has shades of gray. And that should give you curiosity and it should not give you confusions. So at the starting of the class, you might sit with questions and you will get answers to that questions. But end of the class, you should not be confused with those existing questions at least. You can have new questions with you depending on the new concepts. So this current modern education, sometimes it can lead to confusion because what is education? The purpose of education is for one to get self-realization of who you are, whether you are the Atma. So that is the purpose. Then teach what is Dharma. Then teach what is Varnashrama. And then act according to your Varna and Ashrama and then maneuver through this particular world. So when Krishna talks about Bhakti Yoga, so until first 6 or 7 chapters, Krishna doesn't speak about himself because the question comes from Arjuna. But he starts talking about his glory somewhere in 8th or 9th chapter. And then in 10th chapter, he conclusively says that I am God. He establishes that fact. So why he says that is because he is actually giving Arjuna the solution. Arjuna is asking, okay, fine. Now when I am fighting, how do I remember you? With what vision I should be seeing you? So there are so many people I'll be killing. With what vision I should be seeing them? Now, Krishna never said don't fight. That's his duty as a Kshatriya. To maintain the social order in the society at that particular point in time, he had to fight. Right? So now, to answer, relate to Archie's question, yes, the action must be performed, but the results, right? And of course, Arjuna will get the kingdom. But with what consciousness is he fighting? I want to kill them. I don't like them. These guys are bad. Or I am doing this as my prescribed duty as a service to Krishna. What's the difference? The thought process. That's the consciousness. So this bhakti yoga, this process is meant to purify the consciousness, because your intention, your desire, that is what is keeping you bound in this material world. So Krishna says, when he says detached engagement, which means attachment to bhakti yoga, not do anything, right? So now I have to work. I have to raise my kid. It is not because it is my kid. It's because Krishna has given me an opportunity to for inculcating the path of self-realization in another jiva, which is my kid. So now I should give good education so that that kid takes a path of self-realization and understand who is God, and then maneuver through this world smoothly without any hiccups. And we can serve Krishna together as a family. That is the understanding. So with whatever abilities you have, you try to maintain yourself and maintain your body so that it becomes a catalyst for you to follow the process of Bhakti Yoga. That is what Krishna establishes until chapter 12. So now when Arjuna asks, when I'm fighting, how do I remember you? So that's what Krishna says, do this is the process of Bhakti Yoga, and slowly you can see things in a different perspective, see things in a different vision. So now, according to your particular mood, say for example, you take a TV, right? You have different channels in your TV. So now, according to your mood, you watch different channels. How do you do it? You just have to tune in. You just have to tune in from one channel to another channel, right? So similarly is your consciousness. The consciousness, we are tuning our consciousness from material to a spiritual platform. But at the same time, we keep doing whatever we are doing as our prescribed duty. The way in which we see things, the way in which we perceive reality, that is called purification of consciousness. So consciousness is called the state of being aware. That is the definition of consciousness. So what is Krishna consciousness? The state of being aware of Krishna. Who is Krishna? What are the qualities? How we are related to Krishna. So depending on, so when we say that, we detached engagement is not that we don't do any action, but we do spiritual action. That is how we understand. So we relate everything on a spiritual platform. So the level of understanding, that's when Krishna says in the last 13 to 18 chapter, Krishna specifically talks about Jnana Yoga, because just with the knowledge of scriptures, one cannot maneuver in this world. You need to understand how this world functions. You need to understand how the economy functions. Because to serve Krishna, you need to maintain this body and you need to maintain this family. So to survive in this world, you need money, you need to work. Everybody has to do their prescribed duties. Whatever is your varna, everyone has to pick up a varna. Whether it's a doctor, whether it's an engineer, whether it's a teacher, or whether you do yajnas, whatever the fire sacrifices for people. Do whatever you got to do to maintain this particular body. Because if you're not maintaining this body, then how will you be in a state of mind to connect with Krishna in the first place, or practice any of the yoga system for that matter? So that is the purpose. We need to understand, okay, where we are living, which country we are living. Life is easy in this country, where in my home country life is pretty difficult. I get a better life here. And ultimately, if you do all of this for yourself, you can do. That's what Krishna says to Arjuna after giving all this knowledge. But you will take another birth. That's the point. The intention. So he never says don't do, but their intention or desire, that is meant to be purified. So that is what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. If that is not purified, if the intention is for you, somewhere we get mentally concocted, which means we get mentally confused. So how Arjuna gets confused? When he goes in between the two armies, he sees, oh, this is my brother. Ah, this is, my grandfather. These are all my relatives. He starts acting at a mental platform. He gets confused. The sentiments, So we don't say don't become sentimental, because everybody knows what happened before that scene, the whole Mahabharata. Draupadi was stripped naked in front of everybody, and none of the kinsmen even came forward to even help. Where did all the sentiment go at that point in time? The whole point of Mahabharata is to teach us what is right and what is wrong and what is dharma. So that is exactly what Krishna is telling in Gita. So it's basically a manual for leading your current life. So doing work with attachments to yourself or to that particular object. So the object of attachment should always be God or Krishna. And the work, what we do, is an offering. It's a gratitude towards Krishna. That is how we see. And the family, what we are raising, the kids, whatever we have, that is, okay, Krishna has given me an opportunity to cultivate one more jiva in my family. So I'm taking additional responsibilities. A human life is meant to take responsibilities. A human life is meant for sacrifices. You make a connection, you make a sacrifice. You commit and sacrifice. It's not a mental thing. So we can understand from all the relationships, right? Any form of relationship, say whether it's a relationship with whether your boyfriend or your girlfriend or your husband or your daughter or your sons or your grandparents, you first commit towards a relationship and then you make sacrifices. That is how a relationship works. It's as simple as that. That's how a relationship works between two people. You make a commitment and you give your attention and you make some sacrifices. You sacrifice your time towards that particular person. So Krishna is also a person. So we make, as an Atma, we make a commitment and then we do some actions to establish a relationship with Paramatma, who is Krishna. So that is the process of Bhakti Yoga. So when we say detached engagement, Krishna doesn't say escape from this world. Arjuna wanted to escape. Krishna does say engage. He said no escape, engage. And he teaches how to engage. That's the point. So we all got to do certain roles and responsibilities and activities to purify our karma. So by taking responsibilities, we purify karma. That's what our Shastras say. So anything that we do in front of fire is a sacrifice. That sacrifice is meant to please Lord Vishnu. So marriage is a form of sacrifice, saying that, okay, fine, from this time onwards, this so-and-so person is my responsibility. You make promises in front of fire. And what is that promise? If we go back and check the mantras, that, okay, fine, we will now serve the Lord together. And that is a promise. And that is a sacrifice that we are making. So that is the right understanding. So when you go through this Bhagavad Gita and start reading the shloka by shloka with translation and the purpose, the whole concept will be unfolded to you. So that is the process of reading Bhagavad Gita. So when you read, your mind gets purified. When you understand, your intelligence gets purified. And when you implement it, your soul gets purified. That is how the process works. So this is the user manual which Krishna has given 5,000 years back, knowing that everybody will be confused at some point in time in life to make decisions. And this false ego, identifying yourself with this particular body, is going to be a big thing for people to understand first in the first place. Because everybody has ego. The real ego is your real identity. And Krishna establishes that in the first few verses of the second chapter. And then he starts talking about the yoga process. Because yoga means connection to the Supreme. Unless you know your identity and unless you know who is Supreme, you cannot connect. So when Krishna starts explaining Bhakti Yoga in chapters 6 to 12 of Bhagavad Gita, and the reason he glorifies himself because he is talking about Bhakti Yoga, and he has to, any yoga should have an object of worship, right? And if he is not talking about himself, then whom are you connecting the Bhakti Yoga to? That's the point. And it's very, very clear when he says Like everything, the whole material world and all the spiritual world comes from me. Everything emanates from me. Aham sarvasya prabhavo. That is a verse. Everything emanates from me. It's very, very clear. Me, first person, singular. I don't know how on earth people come to a conclusion that me is an energy. The consciousness is an energy. And in most of the scriptures, it's really, really clear that humans are made after the form of God. Of course, he doesn't have a material form. He has a spiritual form. He's omniscient, which means we can eat just with our hands and mouth. We can see with our eyes and we can listen with our ears. All our senses can perform only one particular activity. But Krishna, he has a spiritual form. He has a spiritual body. He can eat with his eyes. He can see with his ears. He can walk with his nose, anything. So any of his senses can perform any of the activities. So he has a spiritual form. Doesn't mean God is formless. So the understanding of Vaishnavism means God is a person. And we are not able to see. And we are not able to perceive. Why? Because our senses are imperfect. We don't have perfect senses to perceive what is reality beyond this particular world in the first place. And how can we, even perceive God who is like millions and millions, billions of miles away in the spiritual planets? The whole structure of the universes can be given. We hardly try to reach moon after like so many attempts. So to perceive reality, the best way we saw in the second class, the best way to understand is through our ears. We see through your ears. We see through our ears, right? So when we start listening to scriptures, when we start understanding reality from people who have actually seen, which means they have tuned their consciousness. It's like a TV, right? So if you want to see certain things, you tune the TV accordingly. So your consciousness is like that. So how can you tune to a spiritual consciousness? Only when you have the spiritual knowledge and the spiritual intelligence. And that starts by reading Bhagavad Gita. So are you able to relate all the three yoga systems now? So what Krishna says, you perform the process of karma yoga, okay? And using your jnana, you internally renounce and do all your duties as your prescribed duty according to your varnashrama and make it as an offering towards me, bhakti. So all the misconception that we have, so whenever, when we saw about education, right, it increases, a good education should increase your curiosity. So which means it will clear your misconceptions. So most of us have a misconception that bhakti is for lazy people. Nothing like that. Bhakti is for, when we grow old or when we do after a certain number of years, or when we grow old, when we don't have juice in our body, we have so much of work. I have to take care of my family. I have to take care of all this, so many responsibilities. Those responsibilities are in the first place given to you by Krishna. That's what the Bhagavad Gita says. So now, how do you channelize everything towards Krishna? Is Bhakti Yoga. So perfect example is Dhruva Maharaj. He started performing Bhakti at the age of 5. And Prahlad, everybody knows the story of Narsinghadev and Prahlad. How old was Prahlad when he started reciting shlokas and performing Bhakti Yoga? So age is not a number. The problem is the education system, the way it has been structured. So what is real knowledge? We saw this too also in the first class. What is knowledge? What is science? Science is derived from a Greek or Latin word called scientia, which is called as book of knowledge. And what is that knowledge? That we are not this body. That is the real knowledge. And where does it come from? The scriptures. The Bhagavad Gita never changed for 5,000 years. That's the eternal knowledge. It always had just 700 verses. And it has given answers and purposes to many people across the world so far. And nobody goes and changes that. Technology is advanced. Science is not advanced. A modern science should act as a catalyst for us to perceive the real knowledge, which is understanding your own self first. So modern education and modern science has failed miserably because the ultimate goal of education is self-realization. They just teach how to make money, and technology keeps advancing. Things keep changing around you. That's what is happening. We'll have to disconnect, reflect, introspect, and then act. So being in the mode of goodness means, so Bhagavad Gita talks about the three modes, right? Sattva guna, Raja guna, and Tama guna. Mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance. Being in the mode of goodness means first you think and then you act. Being in the mode of passion, you act first and then you think. Being in the mode of ignorance, you don't think at all. You do something random. That is mode of ignorance. So then finally Krishna says now between 13 to 18 chapter. So the Bhagavad Gita is actually over in the 10th chapter, right? When he says Bhakti Yoga, end of story. Then now the podcast, or whenever a class is there, the class is over, right? During the class, student will have so many questions. So like that, Arjuna had questions and Krishna explained the process of yoga system so that he can relate to. Now, after all that knowledge is there, so after the class is over, we'll always have questions. Depending on our existing views, we try to connect the knowledge with our existing views. That is how Arjuna had questions from chapter 13 to chapter 18. He tries to put things in his perspective based on how he perceived reality. So there were some confusions and Krishna cleared all that. That is why it's called as Jnana Yoga. So now that you know what is Bhakti Yoga and you know what is Karma Yoga, how do you exist? How do you act with those two together? And Krishna talks about mind. If you want to see psychology, it comes there. If you want to see neuroscience, it comes there. And finally, Arjuna says, and he gives all the pros and cons and all the options. And finally, Arjuna says, like, okay, what is your recommendation? Krishna says, do your duty and then offer the results to me and surrender unto me and perform bhakti. And how to perform bhakti, Krishna has explained clearly in chapter 6 to 12. So how do you perform that bhakti? So that's what we saw in the fourth session, right? So when you want to cultivate a relationship between two individuals, very, very simple concept. Okay, bhakti is not a rocket science. It's very, very easy. It depends on how simple you see things. Now, okay, you have the understanding, you are the Atma. And Krishna says to Arjuna as well, now that you have the understanding, you do whatever you want to do. I'm not stealing your independence from you. He says surrender because Arjuna asked for recommendation. Now the doctor gives you the treatment options and he says, okay, fine, these are the pros and cons. Now you decide and tell me, what do you want to do? Then we go to the doctor and ask, okay, fine, okay, what is your recommendation? That is what Arjuna did in the 18th chapter from verse 60 onwards. Then that time Krishna opens up his heart completely as a friend. That's the beautiful part of Gita. So until then, Krishna was kind of an educator. When what is your recommendation came from Arjuna, right? Krishna opens his heart up and he says, Bhakti is the way to go. So meditation and everything is all the process for different yugas, right? So the process of this current Kali Yuga is chanting the glories of the holy name, Nama Sankirtan. So now how do you cultivate that love? Every religion, every organization, spiritual organization, they say, we have to love God. We have to do this. We have to do that. Can you please somebody explain how to do that? That's the point. So how do you cultivate love between two individuals, two persons? Very, very simple. Now, if you want to love somebody, you got to know about that particular person. So what do? Email, texts, you go out on a date, spend time with that particular person, right? So now Krishna is also a person. So how do you do that? So we say chant, recite the names of the Lord, the holy name, right? Chant Hare Krishna, the Maha Mantra, which means you are writing a letter to Krishna. Okay, fine. What's the next step in the process? Now you have to put that letter in an envelope, right? So you go to temple, you offer to Krishna. Krishna says is a very simple person. Patram pushpam phalam toyam. Give me, a fruit. If you don't have that, give me a leaf. Or even if you don't have that, at least water. Very simple person. You can make some offering. Just get a can of milk or any fruit or a butter or ghee and offer it to Krishna. Go to temple, attend the aartis. Now you wrote a letter to Krishna, you are chanting, and now you are putting that into an envelope. Okay. You're going to temple, there is devotion. Now, how is that delivered to Krishna? How is that now? How Krishna will receive that particular? You wrote a letter, okay? You chant and you read Bhagavad Gita, which means you get to know that particular person, about that particular personality. Okay, now you're putting into envelope, going into temple, right? Now, only when Krishna receives that, he will start reciprocating to you. And you will be able to understand that reciprocation only if your heart is pure, right? So depending on, okay, now first let's talk about how it is reaching Krishna. How it will reach? Through service. That is why people take up various services, right? Charity is one form of service. Or you go, if you don't have money, you can always go. There are a lot of services in the temple. You can go to cleaning, you can go do garlands for the deities, you can chop vegetables in the kitchen, you can cook, you can do pujari service if you're qualified and trained. And during festival times, you can do posters or media service. You can be there in the restaurant serving prasadam. There are a lot of different services. So this is how, when you serve, which means there are a lot of people trying to serve and you go and help them. So that is for the pleasure of the Lord. So when you serve, that makes him happy. So now when you worship different, connect with different devotees and serve, that makes him happy. It makes him really, really happy, which means now that letter through service has been delivered to Krishna. He will accept your service. That is called as devotional service. So service is the engine of devotion. Is the vehicle and it is the engine also. Else, the problem in this current world is everybody thinks that I know everything. Now that intellectually we can understand everything and we can just shy off. But what are you doing with that intelligence is the question here. I can understand everything and I can shy off and I can still be a hypocrite. Very much possible. We all have the independence. That's what Krishna said to Arjuna. These are your options. Do whatever you want. Only because Arjuna asked for recommendations. So Krishna never steals our independence from us. He lets us do whatever we want. He just gave the knowledge in the form of Gita, which is the user manual. So now, if somebody says, okay, now tell me how to cultivate love of God, this is the process to cultivate love of God. A, B, C, D. A is association. So you mingle with, say, for example, if you want to watch a movie, you go and mingle with people who has taste for watching movies. You ask for recommendations. Similarly, who can give you the love of God? Only who has it in the first place. So A, association. You associate with like-minded people. B, book reading. You read Gita and you try to understand about Krishna. C, chanting. These are the ABCs. Chant the holy name. And D, devotional service. Devotion means coming to temple. And service, any form of service that you like. Some people may have. I'm sometimes I won't have time to go and serve in the temple. I make donations, but some people they have a lot of time. They go do actual physical service, which will when it's easily said that when you clean the pots in the temple, cleaning is the best service because all our hearts, our false ego is so high that we don't understand the relationship with Krishna. It is our heart is made of so much of dust and dirt. So when you go and clean the pots in the temple, you can see the dirt coming out of the pots. That is basically like as good as churning of your heart. The dirt gets clean. That is a topmost form of service. Any form of cleaning service is a topmost form of service which pleases Krishna. There are a lot many literatures, whatever I've given is churned out of multiple sources, like different years of study. That so that we can perceive things with our senses in reality. And there are a lot of stories from Puranas where these type of examples are given. So when we read so many literatures, we get the understanding of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that is why we read. So in order to fall in love with that person, you need to first understand and know that person. Else it is without knowing who is God or who is Krishna, without knowing him as a personality, what he likes, what are his likes, what are his dislikes. These are the basic things which we see in this world to love a particular person. Similarly, we'll have to understand Krishna, know more about Krishna, what he likes, what he doesn't dislike. right? And then, keep chanting his glories and this is the package, this is the actual process to cultivate that love. So how will you know that you are growing? That's another question, right? How do you know that you're growing spiritually? Your desires will start changing. So when you do bhakti, all the other material gains or material benefits is a byproduct. That's what Bhagavad Gita says. That's what Krishna says in Gita. I will carry what you lack. Ananyas chintayanto ma yojana pariyupasate. Tesham nityabhuktanam yogakshemam vahamyaham. So I carry what you lack. So in order to perform this service with this current body, right, you need to be situated. So the whole Varnashram system is for you to be seated in a comfortable position to perform devotional service. So if your intention is clear, and if you wanted to be, now you have so much of material responsibilities towards kids and families, and if your intention is pure, and if you practice bhakti yoga according to the process of A, B, C, D, then whatever you lack, Krishna will provide it to you. So all the benefits and gains will come as a byproduct of bhakti. And the process works. That is why when we arrange monthly one spiritual sessions, of course, like I work currently. I do two jobs, two full-time jobs. Two full-time jobs. So it's possible. And I still get my time to chant 1.5 to 2 hours a day. And I go to temple every day. And I'm also living like an ordinary human being. I also have a house. I need to pay my rent. I need to pay my bills and everything. And there are people who are having 3 kids. Only one person in the home is working. And wife is a homemaker. And they also practice bhakti yoga for 15 years. And all the 3 kids are less than 10 years old. And he preaches in the universities. And he works as a director in one of the big fours. And we all lead a sustainable life. So the next session is going to be on practical spirituality. So how to lead a sustainable spiritual life. So the reason why we keep once in a month in-person session is so that we can meet and connect with people. So when we see people already practicing this, that is our inspiration. That is how we grow. We grow from seeing people who actually grew. So the purpose of spirituality is not to renounce or detach from everything. That is a misconception we have. So the real education of Bhagavad Gita you get is spirituality is not detachment from all the material things. Basically, spirituality means attachment to Krishna, attached to divinity, to what is divine, God. That is spirituality. Science can explain everything in this world except one thing, the purpose of life. Science can never explain that. That is why people come with a subjective opinion when it comes to purpose. Everybody will have different purpose. Some people will have purpose in music, some people have purpose in sports, some people will have purpose in work, some people will have purpose in charity, some people will have purpose in humanity, some people will have purpose in saving animals, some people have purpose in leading a society, cultivating a society. Everything is good, absolutely good. And we don't say in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna doesn't say in Bhagavad Gita, give up on your purpose, but channelize all the purpose towards divinity. That is the part of Bhakti Yoga. Nobody is asking you to change your purpose. Nobody is saying don't go to university. Don't worry, Malki. Nobody says no, stop studying or stop working and all of this. You can integrate Bhakti in your life. And your life will become a lot more easier. Easy things will become a lot more easier. Difficult things will become easy. So that is the principle of Bhagavad Gita. So this is what Krishna says in Gita. So I'll stop here and pause for questions. So next session, we'll see what is practical spirituality. How do you integrate the concepts of bhakti in your day-to-day life? And how do you measure success? And how do you measure growth? So with that, we will come to an end of module 1, and module 2, we will move towards a much more little more deeper study of Gita. So we will analyze Gita from a perspective of mind management, right? So if you're not able to manage your mind correctly, then you won't be able to actually be successful in the process of Bhakti Yoga. Then stress management, anger management. So we'll see specific. Now Arjuna has asked 17 questions and Krishna has spoken 535 verses. So we will take particular verses, dissect and see what we can learn from that for our practical application, or a particular set of verses, a sequence of verses, or some verses in different chapters we take and we analyze and we see what we can learn from that. So the next module will be mindfulness. So similarly, every 3 weeks, we will go for a module, and then we will meet once in person, and then next module, and then once in person, 3 weeks, the module will go, one in person, and the next module. So like that, we keep going every Saturday. Any questions?
Prabhuji, you mentioned, or rather, you recited not a verse, but a prayer before you started.
Yes,
Is it possible to get a written?
sure.
Yeah.
Sure. I'll send those prayers, and so that's basically a gratitude which we offer. So I offer my gratitude towards my spiritual master.
Yeah, so if you can send that
Sure.
to me.
I'll send that prayer.
Thank you.
Definitely.
Thank
So
you.
any questions, anybody? So what is karma yoga? What is dhyan yoga, meditation? What is gyan yoga, the intelligence, and how we are connecting and how everything culminates to bhakti? So a conclusion of Bhagavad Gita is bhakti yoga, right? So when you read the purports, Prabhupada has made sure that you get all explanations from that conclusion perspective. All the 4 Vaishnava Acharyas, the 4 bona fide Sampradayas, Ramanuja, Madhvacharya, Chaitanya, Lord Chaitanya, the Gaudiya Madhvacharya, Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya, and then Rudra, Vishnu Swami, Kumara Sampradaya, Nimbarka, all are Bhakti yogis. So which again, we are able to reconcile that the ultimate purpose is bhakti. So if you want to get out of the cycle of birth and death, the cycle of repeated cycle of birth and death, the reincarnation, the 5 Artha Panchakas, the philosophy, and if you want to purify your karma, the only way out is bhakti yoga. Else we'll all be bound with whatever results of that work. We'll be bound with that results, and we will take another birth and we'll progress slowly. So any questions?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, I have one question.
Yes.
Like we are working every day, and
Hmm?
so how we can offer our work to the God? Like how we can offer our whole day to the Krishna?
Very good question. So that's what we are going to see in the next session. Practical spirituality. You don't have to, alter your lifestyle much. So depending on how much of time you have, we will tell you how to structure. We will give you a framework, right, to structure your life, but depending on how much of time you want. So you take 1 step to Krishna, he takes 1000 steps to you. That is how it works. The moment you make an endeavor that, okay, Krishna, I'm giving some time of me to you. Then, if your intention is pure, if you really want, Krishna knows what you're whispering in your heart. If your intention is pure, if you really want to spend more time, he will make arrangements. Have faith. He will definitely make arrangements.
And one more question I have.
Yeah.
Like in other religion, they have different instruction. They are not following the instruction of Krishna, like Bhagavad Gita. So they will still get Krishna after their death, or something else.
Yeah, so basically every religion is a pathway to Krishna. Krishna says in Gita, I reveal myself according to the way in which you want to perceive. So after this particular life, they might take a better human life in a better family where they can approach Krishna. If they follow that particular religion correctly, or if they follow that principles of that particular religion correctly, then Krishna will make sure that they will again get a human form of birth in a family where they can worship any form of Vishnu or Krishna. So he will make arrangements that way, if not now or in few lifetimes. It's a slow progress. Yes, Diksha.
I just want to ask you, if we are in periods, like, can we read the Bhagavad Gita or like
Yes,
no?
you can.
And what about the like chanting? Can we do the
Yes,
chanting?
you can chant, you can read, you can come to temple also. It's just that
Okay.
you cannot do any services or make any offering. That's it. You can
Oh,
still chant, you can still read, you can come to temple. It's just that you can't do service in the kitchen, or you can't do service in the prasadam area. That's it. Other than
oh,
that, any other services, or you cannot do garlands, because garlands we offer it, right? So we are basically considered like impure to do very specific services. That's it. Other than
what
that,
about having the prasadam? Like if
yeah,
we
you
go
can
to
you
the
can eat
temple.
prasadam. You can eat prasadam.
Oh,
You just can't
okay.
cook. You just can't be involved in cooking or any of the deity worship activities like garland seva or cooking seva. That's it. Other than that, everything you can actually do. There are no restrictions. It's very practical.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, good question. Any other question? Brandon, Indra, this is your first session. Do you have any questions? Shreya, we can't see you. Any other questions from anybody? All clear, Brendan. Nice to see you with Tilak. So you learned to put Tilak, Brandon.
Yes, I try to use.
Yeah, it's nice. I observed when you came initially. It's good, looking good on you. Nice,
Thank
nice. So next class we'll see from a practical perspective, like how Kalyan. What it says, Kalyan Zefun. Is that your name? Kangana, right? Kangana. Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
Kangana. So like how Kangana. So she's very sincere every day. Like every week she's attending from. You're from Northern Territory, right? Alice
Yeah,
Springs, Darwin.
from
Yeah,
analysis. Yeah.
yeah. Nice. So every
We
week.
don't have ISKCON center here. That's why it's
Yeah.
hard.
So yeah, no, don't worry. So next class we'll cover how you can actually structure your life. So the first we'll start with the basics so that you can start implementing that, and then we can continue getting more and more deeper, and we can churn Gita more. We'll get a lot of interesting concepts, which will be lovely. You guys will enjoy.
And Prabhuji, can we get that those mantras while
Yes.
offering food and while we taking the prasadam?
Yes, all that I'll be giving in the next class. So
Okay.
all the mantras, everything we'll give in the next class. So that'll be like a structure. So say very, very basic things, which will take not more than 30 minutes of your day. 30 to 45 minutes, that's it. If you are consistent with that, you will see the results, the changes. All good? Any question, Indira?
Yeah, all good.
All good? You are able to follow the session?
Sorry?
Were you able to understand the session today?
Yeah, not all, but
All good? Okay, nice. All right, then we'll close this call, and I'll see you all next Saturday. Good. Hare Krishna.
Oh,
Okay,
Krishna.
Hare Krishna, everyone.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.